A millionaire hires a new cleaning employee and is shocked to discover that she is his pregnant ex-wife. His reaction shocks everyone, but no one could have imagined what he would do with her afterwards. A decision that will change their lives forever. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the pristine floors of Callum Pierce's Napa Valley estate, casting long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked rows of organic grapevines. At 42, Callum had mastered the art of the perfect morning routine, a sunrise meditation session followed by a carefully crafted green smoothie and a quick scan of the morning's environmental news on his tablet. The house itself was a testament to modern, sustainable architecture, all recycled materials, solar panels, and state-of-the-art water conservation systems. It was exactly what you'd expect from the CEO of Pierce Environmental Solutions, one of America's leading environmental consulting firms. Every detail of the 6,000-square-foot home had been meticulously chosen to reflect both luxury and environmental consciousness, much like the carefully curated image Callum had built for himself over the years. Running his fingers through his salt and pepper hair, Callum adjusted his Italian silk tie in the mirror. The reflection showed a man who had everything figured out: success, influence, and soon, the perfect marriage. His engagement to Evelyn Thorne had made headlines in both business and society pages. The union of Pierce Environmental Solutions with the Thorne real estate empire was set to create a powerhouse in sustainable development. His phone buzzed with a message from Evelyn. "Don't forget the charity gala tonight, darling. Wear the blue tie I got you. It matches my dress perfectly." Callum smiled, appreciating how Evelyn always thought of these details. She was the perfect partner for the life he'd built, understanding the delicate dance of power, influence, and appearance that came with their position. But something felt off this morning. Perhaps it was the empty echo of his footsteps through the immaculate halls, or maybe the way the morning light caught the dust motes floating in the air. Dust that shouldn't be there, given how much he paid for housekeeping. His new housekeeper was starting today, and he had high expectations. The house needed to be immaculate for the endless stream of business partners and social connections that frequented his home. As he descended the curved staircase to the main floor, Callum's mind wandered to the quarterly reports, waiting for his review. Pierce Environmental Solutions had just secured a major contract for developing sustainable infrastructure in 3 major cities. It was the kind of deal that would have excited him deeply once, back when he first started the company with... He stopped that thought before it could fully form. The sound of cars pulling up to the service entrance drew his attention. That would be the new housekeeper arriving. He hadn't bothered to review the hiring details. His house manager handled all of that. All he cared about was maintaining the perfect order that his life demanded. Callum grabbed his briefcase and headed for the front door, planning to leave through the main entrance and avoid any awkward first-day interactions with the household staff. He had a board meeting at 9, followed by lunch with potential investors, and then final preparations for tonight's gala. There was no time for distractions. As he reached for the door handle, the sound of a familiar laugh drifted in from the service entrance, a laugh he hadn't heard in 5 years, but would recognize anywhere. His hand froze mid-reach, his heart suddenly pounding against his ribs. It couldn't be. There was no way. Callum's feet moved of their own accord, carrying him toward the service entrance. The morning sun suddenly felt too bright, too harsh, as if conspiring to illuminate every crack in his carefully constructed world. The sound of voices grew clearer, his house manager's professional tone mixing with that hauntingly familiar laugh. He rounded the corner just as the house manager was saying, "And this will be your service entrance key, Mrs. Langley." The words hung in the air like smoke. There she stood, Maris Langley, the woman he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Her dark hair was shorter now, falling just past her shoulders instead of the waist-length waves he remembered. She wore simple black pants and a loose navy blouse that couldn't quite conceal the gentle swell of her stomach. Pregnant. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The house manager noticed him first. "Oh, Mr. Pierce, I wasn't expecting you to... Shall I make the introductions?" Maris turned, and their eyes met. The warm brown eyes he remembered now held a guarded expression, but underneath he could see a flash of the same shock he felt. She recovered first, smoothing her features into a mask of professional detachment. "That won't be necessary, Margaret," Maris said quietly. "Mr. Pierce and I are acquainted." Callum found his voice, though it sounded strange to his own ears. "Margaret, could you give us a moment?" The house manager nodded and discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone in the morning sunlight. "What are you doing here?" The words came out harsher than he intended. Maris lifted her chin slightly, that familiar gesture of defiance he'd once found so endearing. "Working, obviously, though I wouldn't have taken the position if I'd known it was your house. There must have been a mix-up with the agency." "A mix-up?" Callum ran a hand through his hair, disheveling his perfectly styled appearance. "You're pregnant, Maris, and you're here as my housekeeper? This has to be some kind of joke." "My personal life is none of your concern," she replied, her voice cool and controlled. "And yes, I'm a housekeeper now. Life doesn't always go according to plan, something you taught me very well." The implied accusations stung. Memories flooded back, their shared dreams of changing the world, the environmental projects they'd designed together, the way it had all fallen apart when he'd chosen ambition over their partnership. "I'll have Margaret arrange for someone else," he said, reaching for his phone. "Don't bother." Maris's voice was firm. "I need this job, Callum. I'm professional enough to handle it. The question is, are you?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. Beyond the changes in her appearance, he saw something else, a weariness around her eyes, a determination in her stance. This wasn't the same woman who'd walked away from him 5 years ago. This Maris had weathered storms he knew nothing about. "Does Evelyn know?" he asked suddenly, remembering his fiancée. A slight smile curved Maris's lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" Before he could respond, Margaret reappeared with a stack of fresh linens. "Mrs. Langley, shall we continue the tour?" Maris nodded. All business now. "Of course." She turned to Callum, her voice perfectly professional. "If you'll excuse me, Mr. Pierce, I have work to do." He watched her follow Margaret up the service stairs, her movements slightly altered by her pregnancy. Questions swirled in his mind like leaves in a storm. Why was she working as a housekeeper? How far along was she? What had happened to her thriving career in environmental science? And most troubling of all, what did Evelyn know that he didn't? His phone buzzed again. The board meeting. The perfect life he'd built was waiting for him, demanding his attention. But as he walked to his car, all he could think about was the look in Maris's eyes when she'd said, "Life doesn't always go according to plan." For the first time in 5 years, the pristine order of his world felt like nothing more than an elaborate facade. The Pierce Environmental Solutions boardroom buzzed with anticipation as Callum stood at the head of the table, preparing to present their latest sustainable infrastructure initiative. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of San Francisco Bay, but his mind kept drifting to another view. Maris standing in his home service entrance, pregnancy visible beneath her loose blouse. "Mr. Pierce?" His assistant's voice snapped him back to reality. "They're ready for you." Callum straightened his blue silk tie, not the one Evelyn had suggested, he realized with a start, and began his presentation. The words flowed automatically, years of practice carrying him through slides about carbon footprint reduction and renewable energy implementation. But even as he spoke about environmental impact assessments, His thoughts betrayed him. He remembered the first time he'd met Maris at an environmental conference in Seattle. She challenged his presentation on corporate sustainability, pointing out the gaps between profit and true environmental responsibility. Her passion had both irritated and fascinated him. 3 months later, they were working together. 6 months later, they were married. What about the Texas contract? The question from one of his board members jarred him back to the present. The Texas contract? Callum fumbled with his tablet, trying to locate the relevant information. The Henderson Development Project, his CFO prompted. The one we're announcing at tonight's gala? Of course, the multi-million-dollar contract to greenwash a series of luxury developments in Houston. The kind of deal he'd sworn he'd never take when he first started the company. The kind of deal Maris had always fought against. Right, he recovered smoothly. The Henderson project is proceeding as planned. Our team has identified several opportunities to implement sustainable features while maintaining profit margins. The meeting continued, but Callum felt increasingly disconnected from his own words. When had this become his life? When had he started seeing environmental challenges as profit opportunities rather than moral imperatives? His phone vibrated with a message from Evelyn. Lunch at Le Petit? Need to discuss gala details. The gala. Another performance in his perfectly choreographed life. He texted back a quick confirmation, though his appetite had disappeared hours ago. Le Petit was their usual spot, an exclusive French restaurant where the maître d' knew their preferred table and their regular orders. Evelyn was already there when he arrived, looking immaculate in a tailored white suit that probably cost more than what Maris would make in 3 months as a housekeeper. Darling, Evelyn rose to kiss his cheek, her perfume expensive and familiar. You look distracted, tough meeting? You could say that. Callum studied her perfectly composed features. Evelyn, we need to talk about the new housekeeper. She took a slow sip of water, her red lipstick leaving a perfect imprint on the glass. Oh, is there a problem with her work already? Don't. His voice was sharp. You knew it was Maris, didn't you? You knew she was pregnant. Evelyn carefully placed her water glass back on the table. Of course I knew. I make it my business to know everything that might affect our future, Callum. The question is, what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? He leaned forward, keeping his voice low despite his rising anger. You hired my ex-wife, my pregnant ex-wife, as our housekeeper without telling me. How long have you known? Long enough to know she's not a threat to us. Evelyn's voice was calm, reasonable. She needed work, Callum. Would you have preferred I let her struggle? I thought this was the kindest solution. Kindest? He almost laughed. Having her clean our house is kind? Better than having her show up at some public event, desperate and pregnant, don't you think? This way we can keep things controlled. The word hit him like ice water. Controlled. Everything in his life was controlled now. His schedule, his image, his relationships. When had he become this person? The baby, he said suddenly. Do you know if it's yours? Evelyn's smile was sympathetic. Does it matter? We have a plan, Callum. A future. Don't let ghosts from the past derail everything we've built. He looked at his fiancée, really looked at her. She was everything he'd thought he wanted. Sophisticated, ambitious, practical. But sitting there, discussing Maris's pregnancy, as if it were a minor business inconvenience to be managed, something inside him rebelled. I need to go, he said, standing abruptly. I have some things to take care of before the gala. Callum? Evelyn's voice held a warning note. Don't do anything impulsive. Remember who you are now. That was exactly the problem, he thought, as he left the restaurant. He wasn't sure he recognized that person anymore. Oakland's Fruitvale district was a far cry from Callum's Napa Valley estate. His Tesla looked out of place among the modest vehicles lining the street as he double-checked the address he'd obtained from Maris's employment file. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the apartment buildings, where children played on small patches of concrete that passed for playgrounds. The building was a three-story walk-up with faded paint and window air conditioning units humming against the late afternoon heat. Callum found himself counting the security cameras, or rather, the lack of them. This was where Maris lived now, the woman who had once presented environmental initiatives to the UN. He climbed the stairs to apartment 3B, each step heavy, with the weight of unwanted realizations. A worn welcome mat sat crooked at her door. He could hear the muffled sound of a radio playing inside, one of those public radio stations Maris always loved. His knock seemed too loud in the narrow hallway. The music lowered and he heard footsteps approach. The door opened and there was Maris, changed from her work clothes into loose cotton pants and a well-worn Berkeley environmental science t-shirt that stretched across her pregnant belly. Surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by wariness. "How did you find my address?" she asked, not moving to let him in. "I had to know," he said simply. "Can we talk?" Maris studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was small but neat, with second-hand furniture, arranged to make the most of the limited space. What caught his eye were the plants, dozens of them, turning the tiny living room into a miniature greenhouse. He recognized some of the specimens they'd collected together during their research trips. "They're the only luxury I allow myself," Maris said, noticing his gaze. "Everything else went to medical bills." "Medical bills?" She lowered herself carefully onto a worn armchair, gesturing for him to take the couch. "My father's cancer treatments. Not that you'd know about that, hmm? You were too busy building your empire to notice when your former father-in-law was dying." The words hit him like physical blows. George Langley had been more than a father-in-law. He'd been a mentor, one of the first to believe in their environmental mission. I didn't know." "No, you didn't." Maris's voice was tired rather than accusatory. "Just like you didn't know I almost lost this baby 2 months ago because I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet." Callum felt the room spin slightly. "What?" "Severe anemia and exhaustion. The doctor ordered bed rest, but..." She gave a bitter laugh. "Who can afford bed rest these days, especially with international research positions mysteriously falling through?" The implication was clear. "Are you saying I had something to do with that? Did you actively blacklist me?" "No, but word gets around in environmental circles. The brilliant Dr. Langley, who supposedly tried to steal proprietary information from Pierce Environmental Solutions during the divorce. Amazing how that rumor spread right after I refused to sign away my rights to our joint research." Callum stood up abruptly, pacing the small room. "I never spread any rumors. That was corporate damage control. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Maris corrected. "It was easier to let your lawyers handle everything while you focused on becoming the king of corporate environmentalism." She rubbed her belly absently. "The irony is, I actually applied for a research position at Pierce Environmental last year. My resume was rejected within hours." "That's impossible." "I review all senior applications personally." "Do you?" Maris reached for a folder on her coffee table and handed it to him. Inside was a rejection letter from his company's HR department, dated 6 months ago. He had never seen the application. "Evelyn sits on the hiring committee," Maris said quietly. "She made sure to tell me herself when she offered me the housekeeping position. Called it a generous alternative." The pieces clicked into place. Evelyn's knowledge of the pregnancy, her careful management of the situation, her talk of keeping things controlled. How long had she been orchestrating this? A small sound of discomfort from Maris interrupted his thoughts. She was pressing. a hand to her side, her face tense. "Are you okay?" He moved toward her instinctively. "Just Braxton Hicks contractions. They're normal." She waved off his concern, but couldn't hide her exhaustion. "Look, Callum, why are you here? Really?" He looked around the small apartment, at the carefully tended plants, at the worn furniture, at the woman who had once shared his dreams of changing the world. "I don't know," he admitted. "When I saw you this morning, pregnant, working as my housekeeper, everything I thought I knew about my life suddenly felt wrong. That's not my problem anymore." Maris struggled to her feet. "I have to get ready for my evening job. Some of us can't afford to only work one shift." "You're still working after being at my house all day. Online tutoring, environmental science for college students. The irony isn't lost on me." She moved to the door, clearly ending the conversation. "Go home, Callum. Go back to your perfect life with Evelyn. Just make sure she pays me on time. I can't afford any delays in the medical bills." As he walked back to his car, Callum's phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from Evelyn about the gala, from his assistant about the Henderson contract, from his PR team about tomorrow's press conference. His perfect life demanding his attention. But all he could think about was Maris, alone in that small apartment, struggling to survive while carrying their child. It had to be their child. And how he had been too blind, too self-absorbed to see what was happening right under his nose. The San Francisco Symphony Hall glittered with environmental elite, its classical architecture bathed in green lighting for the annual Sustainable Future Gala. Callum stood at the entrance, Evelyn's hand perfectly positioned in the crook of his arm, both of them dressed impeccably. He in a midnight blue tuxedo, she in a shimmering emerald gown that cost more than 6 months of Maris's rent. "Remember," Evelyn murmured as they descended the grand staircase, "the Henderson Group is expecting the official announcement tonight. Robert Henderson himself flew in from Texas." The reminder felt like a noose tightening around Callum's neck. The Henderson contract, luxury developments masquerading as environmental initiatives, the exact kind of project he and Maris had once sworn to fight against. Now here he was, about to announce it as his company's crowning achievement. "Mr. Pierce," Robert Henderson's booming Texas accent carried across the room. "There's our man of the hour." Henderson approached with his typical swagger, champagne in hand. He was a tall man with an artificial tan and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Behind him trailed a group of investors, all eager to be part of what promised to be a highly profitable venture. "Robert," Callum shook his hand, going through the motions, "I trust your flight was comfortable." "Comfortable as can be in the corporate jet." Henderson laughed. "Though I suppose we should all be flying commercial soon. What with all this? Green business, right?" He winked conspiratorially. "Good thing we know how to make it work for us." Evelyn smoothly joined the conversation, her social skills impeccable as always. "The partnership between Henderson Development and Pierce Environmental Solutions will set new standards in the industry." Callum felt sick. He excused himself to get a drink, making his way to the bar. The bartender poured him a scotch, his usual. Everything about this evening was usual, practiced, perfect, and completely false. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his house manager. Mrs. Langley collapsed while cleaning the East Wing. Called medical assistance. She refused hospital, but insisted on returning home. Thought you should know. The crystal glass nearly slipped from his hand. "Everything all right, darling?" Evelyn had materialized beside him, her voice low and controlled. "You look pale. Did you know?" He turned to her, keeping his voice equally quiet. "Did you know about her health conditions when you hired her?" "Callum, this isn't the time or place." "Did you know?" His voice rose slightly, causing a few nearby heads to turn. "Of course I knew." Evelyn's perfectly manicured hand gripped his arm. "I know everything about her. It's my job to protect our interests." "Our interests?" He pulled away from her grip. "She's carrying my child, Evelyn. My child, and you have her cleaning our house while she's at risk?" "Keep your voice down," Evelyn hissed. "We don't know it's yours. And even if it is, think about what you're doing. The Henderson contract alone is worth more than what? Than a human life, than basic decency." The words came out louder than he intended. More heads turned. Robert Henderson approached, still wearing his artificial smile. "Everything okay here, folks? We're about ready for that announcement." Callum looked at the man, really looked at him, at his expensive suit, his fake tan, his practiced smile. He saw himself reflected in Henderson's appearance, another man playing a part, selling out his principles for profit. "Mr. Henderson," Callum said, his voice clear and steady, "I apologize, but there's been a change of plans." "Callum," Evelyn's warning tone cut through the air. "Don't." But he was already walking toward the podium, where the microphone waited for his announcement. The room quieted as he took the stage. Hundreds of expectant faces turned toward him. His prepared speech sat in his pocket, forgotten. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I came here tonight to announce a major partnership between Pierce Environmental Solutions and Henderson Development." He paused, looking out at the crowd. "But I can't do that, because doing so would mean continuing a lie I've been living for far too long." The room went completely silent. In the front row, Evelyn's face had gone rigid with fury. Robert Henderson's smile had disappeared entirely. "5 years ago, I made a choice between profit and principle. I chose profit. I told myself it was necessary for growth, for success, for the greater good. I sold out not just my own ideals, but betrayed the trust of someone who believed in real environmental change." He could see his board members shifting uncomfortably, investors whispering to each other. His perfect world was crumbling with every word, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. "Tonight, instead of announcing a new partnership, I'm announcing a new direction for Pierce Environmental Solutions. We're returning to our original mission, real environmental change, not greenwashed corporate projects, starting with the immediate cancellation of the Henderson contract." The room erupted in chaos. Evelyn stormed toward the stage. Henderson was shouting something about contracts and lawyers, and investors were already heading for the exits, but Callum wasn't finished. "And to the person who reminded me of who I used to be, who showed me what real strength looks like, I hope you're resting now, because tomorrow we have work to do." He stepped away from the microphone, ignoring the uproar, pulling out his phone as he walked off the stage. He had a text to send, a simple message to Maris. "I remember who I am now. Let me help, please." The Symphony Hall's underground parking garage echoed with the click of Evelyn's heels as she pursued Callum between the rows of luxury vehicles. Her emerald gown shimmered under the fluorescent lights, beautiful and cold as a snake's skin. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Her voice bounced off the concrete walls. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Callum kept walking, his phone still in his hand. No response from Maris yet. "I know exactly what I've done, Evelyn. For the first time in years, you've destroyed everything we built." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. "The Henderson contract was worth millions. The board will revolt. The shareholders invested in an environmental solutions company." Callum cut her off. "It's time we actually became one." "Because of her?" Evelyn's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the ugly twist of her features. "Because your ex-wife showed up pregnant and suddenly you're having a crisis of conscience?" "No." Callum's voice was quiet but firm. "Because seeing her reminded me of who I used to be. Someone who actually wanted to make a difference, not just profit from pretending to." "How noble." Evelyn's laugh was brittle. "And what about our wedding? Our future? Are you throwing that away too?" Before Callum could respond, His phone buzzed. Not a text from Maris, but from his assistant. Emergency board meeting called for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Henderson's lawyers already in contact. Media requesting statements. The board can't fire you, Evelyn said, reading over his shoulder. But they can make your life hell. Is that what you want? To lose everything? I already lost everything. That mattered 5 years ago. Callum pocketed his phone. I just didn't know it then. This is about the baby, isn't it? Evelyn's voice turned calculating. Fine, we can help her financially, set up a trust fund, but quietly, professionally. Stop. Callum held up his hand. Just stop. This isn't about money. It's about finally doing what's right. He pulled off his bow tie, suddenly feeling suffocated. The ring is in the safe at home. You can pick it up tomorrow. He left her standing there in the garage, her perfect composure finally cracking as she called after him. She won't take you back, Callum. You think one grand gesture erases 5 years? But Callum was already in his Tesla, pulling out of the garage. The city lights blurred past as he drove toward Oakland, his mind racing faster than the car. The board meeting tomorrow would be brutal. The Henderson lawsuit would be worse. His stock options would probably be worthless by morning. And yet, he felt lighter than he had in years. His phone buzzed again as he crossed the Bay Bridge. This time, it was from Maris. Stop trying to play hero. I don't need your help or your guilt. He pulled over at a viewing point, the San Francisco skyline glittering behind him as he typed his response, not playing hero. Finally stopping being the villain. How are you feeling? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, tired. Doctor says I need to rest more. Let me help. Not out of guilt, out of responsibility, and because it's right. The response took several minutes. The project in Canada starts in 2 weeks. I'm taking it. Callum felt his heart sink. The International Reforestation Project. Of course she'd take it. It was a chance to rebuild her career, to get away from all of this, from him. His phone buzzed again. But I could use some help with the medical bills before I go, and maybe some answers about what really happened 5 years ago. I'm up now. Anyway, coffee shop on my corner is open 24/7. He checked the time, almost midnight. The coffee shop would be empty, neutral territory. Safe enough for her to hear what he had to say, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to start making things right. On my way, he typed, then added, and Maris, I'm sorry for everything. The 3 dots appeared one more time, then, sorry doesn't fix the past, Callum, but maybe it's a start. As he pulled back onto the bridge, Callum realized this was the first real conversation they'd had in 5 years. Not the polite fictions of the morning, not the bitter accusations of the afternoon, but something honest, something real. His phone was flooding with messages from board members, from lawyers, from journalists. Tomorrow, he'd have to face the consequences of his actions. Tonight, though, he had a chance to tell the truth to the one person who deserved to hear it most, and maybe, if he was lucky, to hear her truth in return. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour coffee shop cast harsh shadows across the worn linoleum tables. At this hour, the only other customers were a pair of college students with laptops and a taxi driver on his break. Maris sat in a corner booth, both hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea, her work clothes replaced by a soft grey sweater that made her look more like the professor she should have been than the housekeeper she'd become. Callum slid into the seat across from her, still in his tuxedo pants and dress shirt, though he'd discarded the jacket and bow tie. A tired-looking server brought him black coffee without asking. Apparently, he looked like he needed it. You're still wearing your cufflinks, Maris observed quietly. They were the ones she'd given him for their first anniversary, tiny silver globes with endangered ecosystems etched into them. He'd forgotten he had them on. Some things you don't forget how to wear, he said, like guilt or regret. Is that what tonight was about? Regret? No. He took a sip of coffee. gathering his thoughts. It was about finally telling the truth, starting with this. I never spread rumors about you stealing research. That was Marcus Chen. Maris's hands tightened around her cup. Your CFO. Why would they? Because I wouldn't sign off on selling our sustainable agriculture patents to Monsanto. He went behind my back, spread the rumors about you to tank your credibility, then presented the sale to the board as a done deal. By the time I found out the damage was done, your reputation was ruined and the patents were gone. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was a coward. Callum's voice was rough with self-disgust. I thought if I told you, you'd fight it. Take it public. The company was in a precarious position. We needed that sale to survive. So I let you believe what everyone was saying, let you walk away hating me instead of fighting them. Maris was very still, processing this. And now? Why tell me now? Because I saw you today, in my house, pregnant and exhausted, and I realized I'd become everything we used to fight against. The kind of person who values profit over people, who lets others suffer to maintain their position. He met her eyes. The kind of person who lets the mother of their child work 3 jobs instead of admitting their own mistakes. You don't. No, it's yours, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. 24 weeks along, right? That puts conception right around New Year's Eve. Maris looked away, out the streaked window into the night. The Environmental Law Conference in Denver. I was there presenting research on behalf of my father's foundation. You were there for a keynote speech on corporate responsibility. He laughed bitterly at the irony. I saw you across the hotel bar. You were wearing that blue dress you always loved, the one with the stars. And you were drinking whiskey, neat, like you always did when you were troubled about something. She turned back to him. You never told me what was bothering you that night. The Henderson contract, the first version of it. I was going to sign it the next day, our first major step into greenwashing territory. I knew it was wrong, knew it went against everything we'd built. Seeing you there, still fighting for real change, I couldn't face myself. So you faced me instead, Maris said softly, one night of pretending we were who we used to be. I'm sorry, he said again, meaning it more than ever. Not for that night. It was the last time I was honest with myself, but for everything that came after, for not being there when your father got sick, for letting you face all of this alone. I didn't want you there, she admitted. I was so angry, not just about the rumors, but about what you'd become. This smooth-talking CEO with his perfect fiancée and his compromised principles. Every time I saw you in the news announcing another innovative environmental partnership, that was really just corporate whitewashing. I felt like I was watching you disappear. Is that why you took the housekeeping job? To show me what I'd become? No. She smiled sadly. I took it because I needed the money, and because Evelyn made it clear it was that, or nothing. I think she wanted to prove something, to show me how far I'd fallen, or to show you how far you'd risen. I'm not sure which. And now, the project in Canada? It's real environmental work, Callum. Actual reforestation, not just carbon credit trading. A chance to do what I was trained for. She rubbed her belly absently. A chance for both of us to start fresh. Both of us, he repeated softly. It's a girl, isn't it? Maris looked surprised. How did you always wanted a daughter. Said you'd teach her to climb trees and read scientific papers before she was 10. He leaned forward. Let me help, Maris. Not by throwing money at you, though God knows I owe you that, but by being there, by being the kind of father she can be proud of. And how do you plan to do that? I heard your speech made quite a scene at the gala. By rebuilding Pierce Environmental Solutions into what it was supposed to be. Real solutions, real change. He took a deep breath, starting with relaunching our original sustainable agriculture project. Maris went very still. The one that was sold to Monsanto? I kept copies of all our research. The original patents may be gone, but the principles are still sound. We could update it, improve it. We? Her voice was sharp. You're still the best environmental scientist I know, he said simply. And you need a job that doesn't involve cleaning houses. I need someone who remembers what we were fighting for. The company needs both of us. And what about Canada? Take it. Go. Get away from all this mess I've made. But when you come back, he pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. There's a position waiting for you, Director of Research and Development. Your old office, your old projects, everything you deserve. Maris opened the folder, her hands trembling slightly. This is dated 3 hours ago. You did this right after the gala. First thing I did, before the board can stop me. Before I lose my nerve. Before... His phone buzzed, a news alert. The first stories about his gala speech were hitting the media. The stock would start trading in a few hours. Everything was about to change. Maris looked at her tea, then at him, then at the folder. I need time to think. Of course. He stood, leaving enough cash on the table to cover both their drinks several times over. But Maris, whatever you decide about the job, I want to be involved with our daughter, even if it's just as a distant father sending support. You really have changed, haven't you? She looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time that night. No, he said, I'm changing back into who I should have been all along. He turned to go, then paused. Get some rest. Doctor's orders. As he walked out into the night, he heard her call after him. Callum, the cufflinks look good on you. They always did. Dawn broke over San Francisco Bay as Callum strode into Pierce Environmental Solutions headquarters. The trading day hadn't started yet, but the building was already buzzing with nervous energy. Employees huddled around their computers, whispering about last night's news. Some fell silent as he passed, others offered tentative smiles. His assistant, Sarah, waited at his office door with a tablet full of notifications. The board members are already in the conference room. Legal sent over preliminary damage assessments and... She hesitated. Ms. Thorne is here too. Thank you, Sarah. Callum adjusted his fresh suit, navy blue, no tie, approachable but professional. Could you get me the archived files from 2019, the Sustainable Agriculture Project? The one that was sold to Monsanto? That's the one. And Sarah? He turned back. Update the company directory. Dr. Maris Langley, Director of Research and Development. She hasn't accepted yet, but I want everything ready if she does. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded without comment. Good assistants were worth their weight in gold. The boardroom fell silent as Callum entered. 12 faces turned toward him, ranging from furious to concerned to carefully neutral. Marcus Chen, his CFO, sat at the far end, his expression thunderous. Evelyn occupied a chair near the door, her perfect appearance somewhat betrayed by dark circles under her eyes. Before we begin, Callum said, remaining standing, I want to make something clear. Last night wasn't a breakdown or a momentary lapse, and it was a correction, a return to what this company was meant to be. A return to bankruptcy? Marcus snapped. The Henderson contract was worth our souls, Callum interrupted. Because that's what we've been selling. Piece by piece, real environmental solutions replaced by corporate greenwashing. Actual change sacrificed for profitable appearances. The shareholders, another board member began. The shareholders invested in an environmental solutions company, Callum said firmly. It's time we became one again. He opened his laptop, connecting it to the room's display. Sarah, could you share those files now? The screen filled with familiar research data, the Sustainable Agriculture Project he and Maris had developed years ago. This was our most promising initiative, before it was sold without proper authorization. He looked directly at Marcus, who shifted uncomfortably. "That sale saved the company," Marcus protested. "That sale was illegal," Callum corrected, "as was the smear campaign against Dr. Langley. I have proof of both." He placed a USB drive on the table. "Everything's here. Every email, every backdoor deal, every false rumor spread to discredit a brilliant scientist so her work could be stolen." The room erupted in chaos. Marcus half rose from his chair, face pale. Board members talked over each other. Only Evelyn remained silent, watching with narrow eyes. "You'll destroy the company," someone shouted. "No," Callum said calmly. "I'm going to rebuild it, starting with this." He pressed a button on his laptop, and a new presentation appeared. "Our new flagship project, the Genesis Initiative, a complete revival and update of our sustainable agriculture program, led by Dr. Langley herself. If she accepts," Evelyn spoke for the first time, her voice silk over steel. "If she accepts," Callum acknowledged, "but either way, this is happening. We're returning to real environmental work. Those who want to be part of that, stay. Those who don't—" He shrugged. "The door's there." His phone buzzed. A text from Maris. "Just got the contract. We need to talk about some revisions." "Over lunch?" Hope flickered in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral as Marcus stormed out, followed by 2 other board members. Evelyn rose more gracefully. "You're making a mistake," she said softly as she passed him. "No," he replied, equally quiet. "I'm finally fixing one." The morning passed in a blur of emergency meetings, press statements, and damage control. The stock was down 30% by noon, but a small group of ethical investment funds had already expressed interest in increasing their positions. Several environmental organizations had reached out, cautiously optimistic about the company's new direction. At 12:30, he walked into a small vegetarian cafe near the office. Maris was already there, looking better rested than she had in days. She had a stack of papers in front of her and a red pen in hand. "The salary's too high," she said without preamble. "It's market rate for someone whose reputation isn't in tatters." She raised an eyebrow. "We both know I'll have to rebuild my credibility. Start lower. Use the difference to fund graduate research positions." Callum sat down, smiling. Despite himself, this was the Maris he remembered. Brilliant, practical, always thinking about the bigger picture. "Also," she continued, "I want full autonomy in research direction, no corporate interference, and a guarantee that all findings will be published, regardless of commercial impact." "Done." He'd already added those clauses. "And—" She hesitated, then met his eyes. "I want you to join me in Canada for a week. See the reforestation project. Remember what real environmental work looks like." "What about the company? With everything happening, the company needs to remember too." She rubbed her belly thoughtfully. "Besides, your daughter should experience her first forest from the inside, don't you think?" Your daughter. The words hit him like a physical force. "When do we leave?" 2 weeks, after my first trimester screening." She pushed the contract back across the table, covered in red marks. "Fix these things and I'll sign." As they ordered lunch, her a quinoa bowl, him a salad he would have never chosen 2 days ago, Callum felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The sensation of his world expanding instead of contracting, of possibilities opening instead of closing. His phone buzzed again. More crisis meetings, more damage control, more fires to fight. But for now, watching Maris explain her vision for the Genesis Initiative with the same passion she'd had 5 years ago, he knew every cost would be worth it. The morning mist clung to the British Columbia forests like a lover's embrace. Callum stood at the edge of the research camp, watching the sun rise over endless acres of pine and spruce. His Italian leather shoes, completely inappropriate, for the terrain was soaked with dew, but for once he didn't care. Coffee? Maris appeared beside him, offering a steaming mug from the camp kitchen. She looked different here, more alive, wearing practical outdoor gear, her pregnant belly more pronounced in the fitted thermal jacket. Black, no sugar. You haven't changed that at least. Some habits are worth keeping. He accepted the mug, noting how she carried her own cup of herbal tea. How are you feeling? Better than I have in months. She breathed in deeply. The air here, it reminds me of our first research trip. Remember the Amazon Preservation Project? When you lectured me for 3 hours about proper soil sampling techniques. He smiled at the memory. I fell in love with you during that lecture, you know. Your passion for the work was infectious. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the research team prepare for the day's work. Young scientists moved purposefully around the camp, checking equipment, consulting tablets, arranging samples. It was a world away from the corporate boardrooms and charity galas. Dr. Lang Lee, a young researcher, jogged up to them. We're ready for the morning briefing. Maris straightened, switching seamlessly into project leader mode. Coming, Adam. She turned to Callum. Want to see what real environmental work looks like? The morning briefing took place in a large tent filled with maps, soil samples, and eager faces. Maris stood at the front, explaining the day's objectives with the same clarity and passion that had once characterized their joint presentations. The reforestation isn't just about planting trees, she explained, pointing to various soil samples. It's about understanding the entire ecosystem. Each tree species we reintroduce needs to work within the existing biological network. We're not just rebuilding a forest, we're reconnecting a community. Callum watched her in her element, remembering why they'd started Pierce Environmental Solutions in the first place. Not for profit or prestige, but for this, the actual work of healing the planet. The team split into groups, heading out to their assigned areas. Maris led Callum to a nearby site where seedlings were being planted. Here, she handed him a small Douglas fir sapling. Remember how? It's been a while, he admitted, kneeling carefully in the dirt. His $1,000 suit pants would be ruined, but somehow that felt right. The root ball needs to be completely uncovered, Maris instructed, demonstrating with her own sapling, but the trunk needs to stay above soil level, like this. As they worked side by side, planting tree after tree, Callum felt layers of corporate artifice falling away. His hands grew dirty, his back ached, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so satisfied. The Genesis Initiative could support projects like this, he said, patting soil around another sapling. Not just agriculture, but full ecosystem restoration. Thinking big again? Maris glanced at him, a hint of her old spark in her eyes. Thinking right, he corrected. The way we used to. They worked through the morning, stopping only when Maris needed to rest. They sat on a fallen log, sharing water and trail mix, while she explained the project's broader goals. The indigenous communities here have been vital to the project, she explained. Their traditional knowledge of the forest ecosystems. It's exactly what we were talking about years ago, remember? Combining traditional wisdom with modern science? The basis of our original sustainable agriculture project, Callum nodded. Before I let it become just another corporate asset. We can do it right this time, Maris said quietly. Both of us. Together. The word together hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Callum watched as she absently rubbed her belly, a gesture he'd noticed becoming more frequent. She moved, Maris said suddenly. Do you want to? Callum hesitated, then gently placed his hand where she indicated. For a moment, nothing. Then, a flutter, like a butterfly's wing. That's amazing, he whispered. She's more active here, Maris smiled. Maybe she likes the forest too. The moment was interrupted by a call from the camp. The afternoon research teams needed their leader. As Maris stood to leave, Callum caught her hand. "Thank you," he said simply, "for showing me all this, for reminding me what matters." She squeezed his hand briefly before letting go. "The week's not over yet. Tomorrow we're checking the watershed analysis. Hope you brought waterproof boots." "I'll buy some in town tonight," he laughed. Later that evening, as the research team gathered around the camp's fire pit for dinner, Callum watched Maris leading a discussion about tomorrow's projects. His phone had barely signal here, no constant stream of crisis emails, no stock updates, no press inquiries. Instead, his notes app was filled with ideas for the Genesis initiative, each inspired by what he'd seen today. One of the senior researchers approached him, offering a plate of the communal dinner. "Dr. Langley is amazing," she said. "We were thrilled when she agreed to consult on the project, but she mentioned she might not stay for the full term." "She has another project starting," Callum explained, "leading the Genesis initiative at Pierce Environmental Solutions." "Oh," the researcher brightened. "The new Sustainable Agriculture Program? We've all been reading about it. Such a change in direction for your company." "Not a change," Callum corrected, watching Maris laugh at something one of her team members said. "A return to what we always should have been." As if sensing his gaze, Maris looked up and met his eyes across the fire. For a moment, he saw everything that had drawn them together in the first place, the shared passion for the work, the drive to make real change, the understanding that ran deeper than words. She smiled, not the guarded smile of recent weeks, but something warmer, more genuine, something that felt like hope. The Pierce Environmental Solutions conference room felt different after a week in the Canadian wilderness. The floor-to-ceiling windows that had once seemed impressive now felt like barriers between the company and the world they were supposed to be protecting. Callum had arranged the morning's board meeting for 7 a.m., determined to maintain the sense of purpose he'd rediscovered in the forest. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, arranging presentation materials. "Having Dr. Langley present via video link for her first board meeting is unconventional." "Everything about this is unconventional," Callum replied, adjusting the large screen where Maris would appear from Canada. She'd stayed behind to complete the week's research objectives, insisting that real environmental work shouldn't stop for corporate politics. The remaining board members filed in, their numbers reduced after last week's exodus, but those who stayed seemed more engaged than ever. Among them was Patricia Rodriguez, an environmental scientist who'd been quietly disapproving of the company's direction for years. Today, she sat closer to the front, her expression alert and interested. Right on schedule, Maris's face appeared on the screen, the research camp visible behind her. She looked professional but authentic, field jacket over a collared shirt, her hair pulled back practically. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice clear through the speakers. "Before we discuss the Genesis initiative, I'd like you to see something." The screen split to show footage from yesterday's fieldwork, not polished corporate video, but raw, real documentation of ecosystem restoration in action. Young scientists taking soil samples, measuring tree growth, consulting with indigenous experts. The kind of work Pierce Environmental Solutions was supposed to have been supporting all along. "This is what real environmental impact looks like," Maris continued. "Not press releases about green initiatives or carbon credit trading, but actual, hands-in-the-dirt restoration of damaged ecosystems. The Genesis initiative will bring this same level of commitment back to Pierce Environmental Solutions." She launched into the presentation they'd prepared together during evening discussions. At the camp, the Sustainable Agriculture Project was just the beginning. She outlined plans for urban farming initiatives, watershed restoration programs, and partnerships with indigenous communities for traditional land management practices. "The profit margins will be smaller," she acknowledged directly, "but the impact will be real. And here's something the marketing department might appreciate. You can't buy the kind of credibility that comes from genuine environmental work. Patricia Rodriguez was nodding enthusiastically. Other board members were taking notes, asking substantive questions about implementation rather than just costs. The energy in the room had shifted from crisis management to actual engagement. Dr. Langley, Patricia spoke up, how soon can we begin implementing these changes? Some aspects are already in motion, Callum answered, standing to join the discussion. Our legal team is preparing to challenge the original Monsanto sale, citing fraudulent procedures. Once that's resolved, we can... The door opened and Marcus Chen walked in, followed by Robert Henderson. Sorry to interrupt, Marcus said, not sounding sorry at all, but Mr. Henderson and I have some concerns to address. Callum felt the room's energy shift, but before he could speak, Maris's voice came through clear and firm. Mr. Henderson, perfect timing. I was just about to discuss the soil degradation data from your Texas developments. The screen filled with satellite imagery and soil analysis reports, devastating evidence of environmental damage that Henderson's previous projects had caused. Data that would be very interesting to the EPA, Maris continued pleasantly, especially given certain permit applications that seem to have overlooked these issues. Henderson's face reddened. Now see here. No, you see, Callum interrupted, a hint of steel in his voice. Pierce Environmental Solutions is no longer in the business of hiding environmental damage, but in the business of preventing it, or in cases like yours, exposing it. You're making a powerful enemy, Marcus warned. No. Patricia Rodriguez stood up. He's making a powerful ally. The scientific community has been waiting for a major corporation to take a real stand. With Dr. Langley's reputation in the research community and Mr. Pierce's corporate experience, Pierce Environmental Solutions could become a genuine leader in environmental restoration. Other board members voiced their agreement. Henderson stormed out, Marcus trailing behind him looking deflated. Well handled, Callum said to Maris once the disruption had passed. I learned from experience, she replied, a slight edge to her voice. Always keep the data ready. The meeting continued, evolving into a genuine discussion of environmental priorities and practical implementation steps. Board members who had been silent for years offered suggestions and insights. Patricia Rodriguez volunteered to lead a scientific advisory committee. One more thing, Callum announced as the meeting drew to a close. I'm relocating Dr. Langley's office, not to the executive floor, to the research wing. And I'm moving mine there too. Surprised murmurs filled the room. The executive floor can be converted into additional laboratory space, he continued. It's time leadership was closer to the actual work. After the meeting, once they were alone on the video link, Maris raised an eyebrow. Moving your office, that's quite a statement. It's practical, he shrugged. Hard to remember what matters when you're too far from the work. Speaking of which, how's our daughter enjoying the forest? Maris's hand went to her belly, a movement that had become wonderfully familiar. Very active this morning. Maybe she was listening to the meeting. Future environmental scientist? Future whatever she wants to be, Maris corrected. But in a world we helped make better. She paused, then added softly, You did well today, Callum. This might actually work. We did well, he corrected. It only works if we do it together. The word hung between them again, less heavy than before, more like a promise than a question. Behind Maris, the morning sun was rising over the forest, painting everything in shades of possibility. The article in the New York Times business section was causing quite a stir. Environmental reform, Pierce Solutions, radical transformation, sparks industry shift. Callum scrolled through it on his tablet while sitting in his new office in the research wing, surrounded by soil samples and botanical diagrams instead of corporate awards. Pierce Environmental Solutions' dramatic pivot has sent shockwaves through the environmental consulting industry, the article read. Following CEO Callum Pierce's controversial rejection of the Henderson contract, several other major firms have begun re-evaluating their approaches to environmental projects. The company's stock, after an initial plunge, has stabilized with strong support from ethical investment funds and environmental advocacy groups. A knock on his door interrupted his reading. Sarah entered carrying a stack of letters. "More partnership proposals," she said, placing them on his desk. "3 major universities want to collaborate on the Genesis initiative, and," she smiled, pulling out a particular envelope. Dr. Langley's medical insurance cards arrived. Her office is fully set up for her return next week. "Thank you, Sarah." Callum picked up the insurance cards, remembering how different this was from 5 years ago. Back then, he'd let lawyers handle everything during their separation. Now, he'd personally ensured Maris had the best maternal coverage available. His phone buzzed with a text from Maris. "Turn on CNB News. Someone's talking about us." He switched on the wall-mounted screen just in time to see Evelyn being interviewed outside the Thorn Industries headquarters. She looked as polished as ever, but there was a new edge to her smile. "Of course, we were disappointed by the dissolution of the Pierce-Thorn merger," she was saying. "But perhaps it's for the best. Thorn Industries remains committed to practical, profitable environmental solutions, while Pierce appears to be pursuing a more idealistic approach." The interviewer leaned in. "Sources say you've been meeting with Marcus Chen and Robert Henderson. Any comments on rumors of a new venture?" "We'll be making an announcement soon," Evelyn replied smoothly. "Let's just say there's room in the market for both approaches to environmental business." Callum's phone buzzed again. "She's planning something," Maris texted. "Let her," he replied. "We have work to do." And they did. The Genesis initiative was expanding beyond its original scope. Universities were eager to partner with a major corporation doing genuine environmental research. Indigenous communities, hearing about their work in Canada, had reached out about traditional land management collaborations. Even the office culture was transforming. The research wing buzzed with energy as scientists felt empowered to pursue real environmental solutions rather than corporate-approved projects. Patricia Rodriguez's Scientific Advisory Committee had become a powerful voice in company decisions. His phone rang, Maris's face appearing on the screen. "Hey," she said when he answered. "Got a minute? Need your input on something." "Always. What's up?" The realtor sent some options. She shared her screen, showing several property listings. "I know Oakland's been fine, but with the company changes and the baby coming," Callum's heart skipped. They hadn't discussed her living situation since their reconciliation began. "These are all in Marin County," he observed carefully. "Closer to the office," she said. "And," she hesitated, "there's one with a good-sized yard, room for a garden. Maybe some of those seedlings we worked with in Canada. The Douglas firs, and maybe a treehouse eventually." Her voice was soft. "When she's old enough." Callum swallowed hard. "Want me to look at them with you? When you get back?" "I'd like that." She shifted focus, her scientist's mind never far from work. "Also, you should see the latest data from the watershed analysis. It supports everything we theorized about integrated ecosystem restoration." They spent the next hour discussing research findings, property listings, and nursery furniture. It felt natural, this blend of professional and personal, as if they were finally finding the balance they'd lost years ago. Later that afternoon, Callum had another visitor, James Wong, one of their longest-serving environmental engineers. "Sir," James began, then corrected himself. The formal corporate culture was fading fast. "Callum, I wanted to show you something." He spread out a set of plans on the desk. "Remember that urban farming project Dr. Langley and I discussed? Years ago, the one that got shelved because it wasn't commercially viable. I've updated it with current technology, with the new direction we're taking. Let's see it, Callum said, genuinely interested. This was happening more and more, employees bringing back projects they'd once been passionate about, ideas that had been suppressed under the old profit-first regime. As they discussed the project, Callum's phone lit up with another text. From Maris, found the perfect house, 3 bedrooms, south-facing garden, and guess what? Previous owner was a botanist. The garden is already set up for native species cultivation. He smiled, typing back, sounds perfect, for the home nursery and the baby nursery. Her response came quickly. Was that a dad joke already? Getting in practice, he replied, then added more seriously, can't wait to see it. And you. 5 more days, she texted. Try not to revolutionize the entire environmental industry before I get back. Looking around his office, at the soil samples, the research papers, the eager faces of employees like James, bringing their dreams back to life, Callum felt a deep sense of rightness. The company was transforming, but so was he. So were they. Another text from Maris. Baby just kicked. I think she approves of the house. Of course she does, he replied. She's her mother's daughter. She knows what feels right. Outside his window, the sun was setting over San Francisco Bay. Somewhere in that golden light was a house with a south-facing garden, waiting to become a home. And in 5 days, Maris would be back, not as his ex-wife or his employee, but as his partner in business, in purpose, and maybe, if they kept building this new foundation right, in life again too. The late afternoon sun painted the Marin County hills in shades of gold as Callum waited outside the realtor's office. He'd left work early, something the old Callum would never have done, to meet Maris for the house viewing. His fingers drummed against his Tesla's steering wheel, a nervous habit he thought he'd outgrown. A small hybrid car pulled into the parking lot, and Maris emerged, looking both familiar and different. Her time in Canada had added a healthy glow to her skin, and her confidence was visible in the way she carried herself, pregnancy and all. She wore a practical blazer over a flowing dress, a perfect blend of the environmental scientist and corporate executive she was becoming again. "Sorry I'm late," she called out. "The lab setup took longer than expected." "How's the new office?" He fell into step beside her, resisting the urge to offer help she hadn't asked for. "Better than I remembered. Patricia's team has already started integrating our Canadian research data into the Genesis Initiative parameters," she smiled. "And someone filled the office with native California plants." "Sarah's idea," Callum admitted. "She thought it would help you feel at home." The word home hung between them as they met the realtor, a woman who tactfully pretended not to recognize them from the recent media coverage. The house they were viewing sat on a quiet street, set back from the road behind mature oak trees. The previous owner was Dr. Helen Chen, the realtor explained, leading them up the path. She was a renowned botanist who designed the entire garden as a showcase for sustainable native landscaping. The garden was what had caught Maris's eye in the listing, and in person it was even more impressive. Carefully planned beds demonstrated natural ecosystem relationships, with plants arranged as they would grow in the wild. A small greenhouse tucked against the south wall housed seedlings and research specimens. She used to conduct workshops here for local schools, the realtor continued, teaching children about native species and ecosystem preservation. Callum watched Maris's face soften as she explored the garden. She paused by a patch of California poppies, their orange blooms reaching toward the sun. "Our daughter could grow up learning about plants right in her own backyard," she said quietly. Inside, the house was a comfortable blend of modern convenience and natural elements. Large windows brought in plenty of light, and the previous owner had installed state-of-the-art energy efficiency systems. The kitchen overlooked the garden, and a cozy reading nook in the living room seemed designed for Sunday afternoons, with scientific journals. The third bedroom is currently set up as a home office, the realtor explained, but it would make a perfect nursery. It gets beautiful morning light. They saved that room for last. When they stepped inside, Callum heard Maris's small intake of breath. The walls were painted a soft green, and the window looked out over a massive oak tree where birds nested in its branches. "I can see her here," Maris said softly, one hand on her belly, reading under that tree, asking endless questions about the birds helping me in the garden. Callum moved to stand beside her at the window. "The company's daycare center is good, but this would be something special." "Speaking of the company," Maris turned to face him, "Evelyn made her announcement today. Did you see it?" He nodded. Evelyn, Marcus, and Henderson had launched their new venture, Global Green Solutions, promising practical environmental consulting without sacrificing profitability. The business world was already buzzing about the coming competition. "Are you worried?" Maris asked. "No," he said honestly. "They'll get the clients who want easy answers and quick profits. We'll get the ones who want real change." The realtor discreetly stepped out, leaving them alone in the future nursery. "It won't be easy," Maris said. "What we're trying to do with the company, with the Genesis initiative, there will be more resistance." "Like raising a child," Callum replied. "The important things never are easy." She smiled at that. "Listen to you, getting all philosophical. Canada changed you." "You changed me," he corrected. "Again, or maybe you just reminded me who I was supposed to be." Maris was quiet for a moment, looking out at the oak tree. "I like this house," she finally said. "It feels right. But, Callum, if we do this, if I move here, if we try to build this new life, we need to be clear about what it means." "What does it mean?" "It means no more shortcuts, no more choosing profit over principle. Not in business, and not in life." She turned to face him fully. "I won't let our daughter grow up seeing her father compromise his values the way I did. I want her to be proud of both her parents," he said. "Proud of what we're building, all of it, the company, this home, our family, if you want that, too." "I do," she said simply, "but slowly, one day at a time." A bird landed on a branch just outside the window, beginning to build a nest. They watched it work, carefully placing each twig. "Like that," Maris said, nodding toward the bird. "Building something that lasts takes time and attention to detail." Callum reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. "Then we'll take all the time we need. Do it right this time." They stood there together, watching the bird build its nest, while their daughter moved between them. Outside, the garden waited to be tended, the greenhouse ready for new growth. Like the Genesis initiative at work, this place held the promise of something real and lasting, if they were willing to nurture it properly. "Should I make an offer?" Callum asked eventually. Maris squeezed his hand. "Yes," she said, "let's give her roots. Real ones this time." The Genesis Initiative's research lab hummed with activity as Maris supervised the installation of new equipment. At 7 months pregnant, she had to resist the urge to help physically, instead directing the setup from a comfortable chair that Callum had insisted on having brought in. Her tablet displayed real-time updates from their pilot projects: sustainable agriculture implementations in 3 states, urban farming initiatives in 5 cities, and the ongoing reforestation work in Canada. Dr. Langley, a young researcher, approached with soil analysis results. "The initial data from the vertical farming project is showing promising results." "Better than promising," Maris said, reviewing the numbers. "Send these to Callum's team. It's exactly what they need for the EPA presentation." The mention of Callum brought a small smile to her face. He was in Washington, D.C. today, testifying before a congressional committee about corporate environmental responsibility. The old Callum would have sent lawyers or PR representatives. This Callum had insisted on going himself, armed with real data and genuine solutions. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. Committee members actually asking intelligent questions, showing them the Canadian forest restoration data now. "How are you both doing?" She rubbed her belly, feeling their daughter's now familiar movements. "We're fine." She's celebrating the soil analysis results with some enthusiastic kicking. Like mother, like daughter, excited about scientific breakthroughs. "Have you looked at the nursery samples I sent?" Maris switched to her personal email, where Callum had sent photos of sustainable furniture options for the nursery. Each piece was carefully sourced from environmentally responsible manufacturers with detailed information about materials and production methods. "I like the bamboo crib," she texted back, "but we should discuss it in person. When do you get back?" "Late tonight. Breakfast tomorrow at the house." The contractors finished the greenhouse repairs. The house. Their house now, though Maris was still living in her Oakland apartment until the move-in date next week. The sale had closed quickly, and they'd spent weekends preparing it together, installing solar panels, planning the garden expansion, converting the home office into a nursery that would double as a teaching space for their daughter. "Breakfast. Sounds good," she replied. "The doctor's appointment is at 10. Another milestone they would face together. After years of handling everything alone, sharing these moments still felt new, almost surreal. Callum had rearranged his entire schedule around her prenatal appointments, absorbing every detail with the same intensity he once reserved for corporate acquisitions. "Dr. Langley." Sarah appeared at her office door. "The press is requesting interviews about Global Green Solutions' latest announcement." Maris pulled up the news on her tablet. Evelyn's company had just launched a revolutionary green investment portfolio, essentially a collection of superficial environmental projects designed to maximize profit while minimizing actual impact. "No comment," Maris said firmly. "Let our work speak for itself." She returned to the lab, where Patricia Rodriguez was leading a team meeting about integrating traditional farming practices with modern technology. The enthusiasm in the room was palpable. Scientists engaged in real work, not just chasing corporate metrics. "Maris," Patricia called her over, "we've had an interesting proposal from a group of indigenous farmers in Mexico. Their traditional water conservation methods could revolutionize our drought resistance programs." As they discussed the possibilities, Maris felt her daughter move again. She imagined her absorbing all of this, the scientific discussions, the passion for real change, the commitment to doing things right. What a different world from the corporate power lunches and charity galas that had dominated Callum's life before. Later that evening, after the lab had quieted, Maris found herself in Callum's office. The space had evolved over the past months, becoming less corporate and more personal. Photos from their Canadian trip shared wall space with environmental research posters. A small terrarium housed samples from their reforestation project. On his desk, she noticed something new, a framed copy of their original mission statement for Pierce Environmental Solutions, written in their early days together. Beside it sat the latest ultrasound photo of their daughter. Her phone buzzed. Again. "Just landed. Found something in DC you'll both like." Attached was a photo of a tiny organic cotton onesie printed with chemical symbols for photosynthesis. "Our daughter isn't going to be a walking science experiment," she texted back, smiling despite herself. "No," he replied. She's going to be whatever she wants to be, but she should know her parents are changing the world while waiting for her arrival. Maris looked around the office, thinking about everything that had changed. The company was transforming, yes, but so were they. Every decision they made now, from business strategies to nursery furniture, was filtered through the lens of their renewed commitment to environmental responsibility and to each other. "Heading home," she texted. "See you for breakfast. Bring those soil analysis results with you. We can review them before the appointment. Only you would want to discuss soil chemistry over breakfast," he replied. "I've missed that." "Missed you too," she sent back, surprising herself with how naturally the words came now. As she drove home through the evening traffic, she thought about the journey ahead. There would be challenges. Global green solutions wouldn't be their only opposition, and balancing work with impending parenthood wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in years, she was facing the future with a partner who shared not just her life, but her values. Her daughter kicked again, as if in agreement. "Yes," Maris said aloud, "your father's finally figured it out, and this time we're all growing together." The autumn morning painted their garden in shades of gold and amber as Callum cradled his week-old daughter Luna, while Maris conducted a video call from the greenhouse. Through the glass walls, he could see her gesturing enthusiastically about the latest Genesis Initiative results, her natural authority undiminished by the casual clothes she wore during her maternity leave. Luna stirred in his arms, and he adjusted the organic cotton blanket around her tiny form. She had Maris's eyes, warm brown and already so alert, taking in everything around her. "Your mother's explaining how to save the world again," he whispered. "It's what she does best." The past month had been transformative in more ways than one. Luna had arrived on a clear September morning, and Callum had been there for every moment, holding Maris's hand through each contraction, watching in awe as their daughter entered the world with a determined cry that seemed to echo her parents' persistence. Now, as he walked the garden paths with Luna, he could see the future they were building taking shape. The native plants were thriving, the greenhouse was filled with research specimens, and solar panels gleamed on the roof. It wasn't just a home, it was a testament to their renewed commitment to environmental stewardship. Maris finished her call and joined them in the garden, her face lighting up at the sight of their daughter. "How's our little environmentalist?" "Currently investigating the patterns of light through the oak leaves," Callum replied, shifting so Luna could see the dappled sunshine. "I think she's going to be a researcher like her mother." "As long as she follows her own path," Maris said, gently touching Luna's cheek. "Speaking of paths, the board approved our latest proposal. The Genesis Initiative is expanding to include educational partnerships with schools nationwide." The news brought a smile to Callum's face. Pierce Environmental Solutions had not only survived its transformation, but was thriving. Their genuine commitment to environmental work had attracted passionate scientists, dedicated investors, and partners who shared their vision. Even their stock price had rebounded, proving that principle and profit could coexist when handled with integrity. Global Green Solutions announced another merger today, Maris mentioned, settling onto a garden bench. "They're getting bigger, but not better," Callum said, sitting beside her with Luna. "I saw their latest project assessments. All surface, no substance. Evelyn's building exactly the kind of company we used to be, and helping us remember exactly why we changed." Maris took Luna from his arms, breathing in their daughter's sweet scent. "I never thought we'd be here again. Together, I mean, building something real." "I never thought I'd deserve to be here again," Callum admitted. "But watching you these past months, your strength, your conviction, your brilliance, it reminded me of everything I almost lost, everything I want Luna to see in both her parents." The The morning sun warmed them as they sat together, their daughter drifting to sleep between them. In the greenhouse, new seedlings reached for the light. Much like the saplings they'd planted together in Canada, the garden buzzed with life. Bees visiting native flowers, birds nesting in the oak tree, nature thriving in the space they'd created for it. "I have something to show you," Callum said softly, careful not to wake Luna. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather portfolio. "The final paperwork came through yesterday." Maris shifted Luna to one arm and opened the portfolio with her free hand. Inside were legal documents, the complete restructuring of Pierce Environmental Solutions into a benefit corporation, with ironclad commitments to environmental responsibility written into its very charter. The company's future is now legally bound to its environmental mission, Callum explained. "No future board or CEO can ever change that." And he turned to the last page. "I've transferred 30% of my voting shares into a trust for Luna, to be managed by you until she's old enough. Her inheritance won't just be wealth, it'll be responsibility to the planet she'll inherit." Tears sparkled in Maris's eyes as she read the documents. "You really have changed," she whispered. "We've changed," he corrected. "All of us. The company, our work, our family." He gestured to the garden around them. "This is what we were, always meant to build together." Luna stirred, opening her eyes to gaze at her parents. In her face, they could see their future. Not just their personal future as a family, but the future they were working to create through their renewed commitment to environmental stewardship. "She's going to grow up seeing what's possible when you stay true to your principles," Maris said, her voice full of quiet conviction. "When you choose to do what's right, not what's easy." "She's going to grow up seeing her parents change the world," Callum added, "one project at a time." As if in response, Luna reached up with one tiny hand, catching a shaft of sunlight that filtered through the oak leaves above. Around them, the garden continued its quiet work of renewal and growth, a living testament to the power of second chances and the importance of nurturing what matters most. "We should get her inside," Maris said eventually. "The team's waiting for our video call about the new educational initiative." Callum helped her up, watching as she cradled their daughter with the same care she brought to her environmental work. Together, they walked back toward their home, not his or hers, but theirs. A home built on restored trust, renewed purpose, and the promise of a future worth fighting for. In the greenhouse, new seedlings stretched toward the sun, much like the young family that tended them, growing stronger together one day at a time. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Give it a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.